I will now call to order
Recording in progress.
I will now call to order the May 28th meeting of the Historic Review Board. First, we will ask if there are any public comments for items not on the agenda this evening.
Can we start with a roll call? I know we didn't do that online. It's a new thing.
Board Member Green.
Present.
Board Member Edgar.
Here.
Board Member Lawrence.
Here.
Vice Chair Powell.
Here.
Chair Ferry.
Here. Are there any public comments for agenda or items not on the agenda this evening?
There's no one online.
No one, okay. All right. I believe that our first thing is our meeting minutes that need approval. Should we do them as a lump batch or?
We do, though. There's been a couple of errors we wanted to highlight, and then the board can do a voice vote. One is on the February 28th agenda, the 107th Center Street solar panels. The vote of the decision was a template from an old minutes, and so it has older board members. It should be Chair Ferry.
Be Green, Powell, and Ferry.
Okay, so that would be the same. There's 3 people that night, so that would be the first correction. The second one, it looks like Chair Ferry is identified incorrectly as Mr. Ferry in a couple items, so.
I did not catch that.
Just a wholesale correction on that, and those 2 things can just be done with the voice vote. But if there are any others, this is a time to add to it.
I'd move to approve the minutes as corrected.
I second.
Calling the vote. Board Member Green.
Aye.
Board Member Edgar.
Aye.
Board Member Lawrence.
Aye.
Vice Chair Powell.
Aye.
Chair Ferry.
Aye. All right, we will now move forward to the public hearing section of the agenda. We have 2 public hearings on the land use application scheduled tonight. Our role is to conduct the public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. Making those decisions, we must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Members of the Historic Review Board are to be unbiased. Before the start of the hearing, I will ask the board members whether they have any potential conflicts such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the board members have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as a visit to the site in question. Any member of the audience may question any board member about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the board will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and email it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe any criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for the consideration of the City Commission or the Land Use Board of Appeals or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to the issue, will not be deemed appealable to the City Commission or State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court. We will now open the record for Oregon City file number GLUA 2405 and HR 2404. It's historic review for 927th Street. It's a railing modification. I will now ask each board member if they have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or other statements to declare, if they had made a site visit, or if they noted any material information. Board Member Powell?
I have no conflicts. I have no ex parte contact. I did make a site visit a couple times, and that's it. That's it.
Board Member Lawrence?
I have no conflicts, no ex parte, and I have made a site visit once.
Board Member Edgar?
I have visited the sites. I have no conflict of interest.
And Board Member Green?
Ex parte contact.
I have visited the site, no ex parte contact, and no conflict of interest.
I have also visited the site, and I have no ex parte contact or conflicts of interest. Does anyone in the audience wish to question any of the board members about this disclosures? And if not, we will continue with the planning report.
Thank you, Chair Ferry. So as mentioned, this is a requested modification to a previously approved project. The original Historic Review Board application was HR 20-02. And okay, well, okay. While Kay's working on it, it's HR 20-02. The applicant appealed the application for two items, building height and building setback. One was to reduce the height of the ground floor, and a building setback near the historic church house. As it went through the appeals process, the City Commission approved the request to lower the height as a way to reduce the massing of the building, but denied the request for the building setback. The applicant did not request a review for the railing material as part of that initial application. And so I'll keep talking while the presentation is waiting. And so as part of the review process, the mixed-use project, which is a ground floor retail and some apartment buildings on the ground floor, and then all apartment buildings on the second floor, went through the building permit process. The details for the metal railing in the building permit package were not identified by the applicant and were missed by staff. The Historic Review Board conditions of approval regarding the railing material are very specific, and they can only be revised through a Type 3 process. So because they were approved by a Type 3 public hearing, they can only be revised through a Type 3 public hearing. So in order to ensure the project continue in a timely manner, the applicant proceeded with the intended metal railings, but understands if the Historic Review Board does not approve the revised railing material, he will need to replace the existing metal railing with wood railings as identified in the previous conditions of approval before obtaining a certificate of occupancy for the project. So, let's see. There we go. So that was my slide. I'm gonna go to the next slide. So in general, just a general staff recommendation, staff agrees with the approach for metal railing on this mixed-use infill project. Many of the railing locations are on exposed decks or partially exposed decks, and they will weather very quickly under the elements if they were wood. Staff also believes that the initial recommendation was incorrect. The proposal is a contemporary approach to a mixed-use building with brick and lap-sided elements. Various type of railing materials such as composite or metal would be acceptable. Staff, though, does not recommend mixing the railing materials on top of the building, so you pick one. So with that in mind, staff has proposed a recommended revision to condition of approval number 8, and that reads, balcony railings shall be wood, black metal, or composite material with top and bottom rails and baluster interior to the rails. The applicant shall choose only one material option for the railings. So with this, staff recommends this revision because it provides the design intent by the board. So in future applications, there is a specific design intent, which is exposed railing should be compatible with the design and be made of material that will weather and be appropriate for a mixed-use building. So the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association provided comments on the applicant's submittal materials. They ultimately concurred with the proposed materials, but respectfully requested that the HRB address these behaviors with appropriate consequences to prevent reoccurrence and minimize the negative community impacts. This is the point where I put my land use hat on and say the role of staff and the Historic Review Board as a quasi-judicial board is to look at the proposal based on the criteria at hand for approving, and extraneous information or emotions are not really part of this approval. So as the board deliberates this application, please make sure that you're directing all your deliberations to the criteria for approval and the design guidelines for new construction. The site is located at the corner of 7th Monroe. It was previously the Olson's Pharmacy building that was damaged by fire and then demolished, and a proposed mixed-use project was approved by the Historic Review Board once in 2014 and again in 2020. This shows to the right the existing condition. I took this photo a couple weeks ago showing one of the exposed railings on the second floor. That's a little courtyard on the second floor between a couple of the units. This is some additional current photos. One is looking from the parking lot on Monroe Street to the rear, and the one to your right is looking towards 7th Street, kind of just over the construction fencing. This shows the HR 2002 elevations for the two areas that have railings. So you have an option this evening, approve the proposal with the modified conditions, and I'll bring that back up as we move forward. Approve the proposal with modified conditions and provide revised findings. Deny the proposal, that means you retain what the existing HR 2002 condition was for the wood railings, or continue the hearing and request more information. So I'm gonna go back here, and I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is here this evening. Let me know if you have any questions.
Are there any questions for staff?
The only question I have, I wasn't here at the time, was there a reason for wood railings?
I don't know. I was not the staff member on that application. I think this is my, looking through the staff report, I just didn't really see the discussion related to it. I think it's the standard condition for residential railings. So I'm thinking it was just a standard residential railing condition without any further conversation about what does it mean to have that exposed railings in for a wood railings in exposed area on a the practicality of it. And I just think that level of conversation just wasn't there. They were looking at so many other pieces, the setbacks and this height and a bunch of other things, and that kind of just, I think, filtered down to not discussed at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. That's kind of what
Yeah, the applicant's here, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'd like to now invite the applicant up. You have 15 minutes to describe your application.
John Delson Engineering. I'm the engineer of record for this project. And sorry, I do have problem hearing that the sound is not so great. But what was the question?
Oh, you have 15 minutes to describe your application, and you have this time to let us know anything you'd like us to know.
Okay, so if we are talking about the guardrails, right? Yeah. So we always done metal guardrail for multifamily or commercial project, never wood, for a few different reasons. Number one would be durability and safety. As we know, wood is very breathable and high maintenance, and it may be unsafe in a few years. So also we looked around in that neighborhood, and we saw pretty much all the commercial project with metal guardrails. So for life safety and to match the neighborhood, we decided to use the same material, and the original blueprints were done with the metal guardrails.
Thank you.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other representatives of neighborhood associations or anything? Okay. We will now move on to board deliberations.
I'll start it off. I went out to take a look at it carefully, walked around, and had experience with some of the wood railings and everything that I've done in my house that are now 20 years old. The weathering that I have on some of my own stuff that I hope to have done right sure shows 20 years shows it's not as good as it was. It's not far from what I hoped to have. However, I feel that to me, this is the least amount of problems I've with this design and what got approved to me. The windows and a lot of other things are so it's kind of like look at it and just say that it fits in. That's about all I want to add to it. It's safe.
Okay. Board Member Green?
I think that the material is appropriate for sure, in my mind, to the building, and for the reasons stated. In a building of that type, the maintenance low maintenance product means it will likely be well maintained, and I think that that's certainly a crucial factor there, right in the core business district there. It's in my view, a nicely designed and well executed building, and I think the product's appropriate. I will say that I do appreciate the submittal by the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. They were careful in their evaluation and took note of missteps. And of course, our goal going forward, I think, all the way around, is to streamline our endeavors to minimize missteps and so forth. And to that extent, that would be good to accomplish. But I appreciate the fact that in summary that they they also agreed that that's a good product, and I concur with that.
Board Member Lawrence?
I don't have anything else to add. I agree that the railings are accommodating to the building, and I think that it's the proper use of materials. There's nothing else I have to add.
Thank you. Board Member Powell?
I concur. I mean, I think it looks good. I think it was a good choice. I think there was probably some confusion early on, but it looks good, and I support it and anxious to see it finished.
Yeah, I concur with everything everybody has said. I think it's an appropriate choice. I think it actually looks nice on the building. And for the safety issues everyone's brought up, I think I would be in support of revising the condition. I think how we're all feeling.
So I'd make a motion then to approve the correcting the conditions of approval as stated by the staff.
I second.
I'll call the vote. Board Member Green?
Aye.
Board Member Edgar?
Aye.
Board Member Lawrence?
Aye.
Vice Chair Powell?
Aye.
Chair Ferry?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, we will now move on to our next case, which is GLUA 2406 and HR 2405. It's a solar panel proposal at 720 11th Street, the James and Sarah Roake house.
All right. Thank you, Chair Ferry. This is actually a very timely application. It kind of coincides with the work the board will be doing later in the agenda. I have some options for you and some discussions about how to approach this application. So we'll get the, oh, there we go. Okay. So the James Roake House is a designated structure in the McLaughlin Conservation District. And as you're aware, HRB policy specifies that solar technology be placed on secondary roof planes currently. 2 of the panels are proposed along the northwest front-facing roof gable. This roof plane actually has significant lower solar irradiance than the majority, which is on the rear. The 2 panels appear to be within the first third of the front gabled roof. The board could choose to approve this application as proposed, or request the applicant shift the front panels to be located in the back 2/3 of the roof plan, which be consistent with the draft revisions. In talking with the applicant, they're actually maybe looking at potentially 1 or 2 more. So in this conversation with the applicant, if the board moves to basically require the applicant to, to meet what is our intended new policy for type 1, if they want to add 1 or 2 more panels that are also on the rear 2/3, that may be something the board may want to look at in their decision. Let's see, no public comments were received for this application. And the historic review board policies were created over the years to help staff review projects that are consistent and compatible with designated structures through a type 1 building permit process. And so currently, solar panels are permitted only on secondary facades through the type 1 building permit process. That's why the applicant is here this evening. Future changes would allow further applications like this to potentially go through type 1, but that may be a couple more months before that becomes adopted. So this property is located at 720 11th Street. And I have some additional photos. This shows the front elevation. As you go up Jefferson Street, you'll see the side elevation. What I've identified here, these are the 2 locations of the panels. So you see the 2 panels on the left, you can see from 11th Street. And then the rear panels, you can see up the hill on Jefferson Street. but it is a second, even though you can see it as still a secondary facade. So really, the board is really concentrating on the photo on the left, which are the two panels that you can see from the front elevation. This shows the roof plan with the solar array I've identified in the circles. The two that are visible on the front elevation, they look a little bit to be in that front third, so they could be pushed back a little bit more and stay within the revised standards. And the roof length is really the top of the peak of the roof gable is the length you're dividing the 1/3, 2/3 from, not including any front porch. This is from the applicant's packet. This shows the solar study. The brighter, lighter colors have the higher solar irradiance, and the more purple it is, that's the lower the solar options. Let's see. This application from the board is subject to our design guidelines for exterior alterations and new construction. And really the three items I wanted to look up were provisions of the city comprehensive plan, our economic, social, environmental, energy consequences, and the design guidelines adopted by the Historic Review Board. So specifically, we have two sections in our new comprehensive plan that looks at solar panels. One is to encourage property owners to preserve historic structures in a state as close to, original construction as possible while allowing the structure to be used in an economically viable manner. And then our economic development strategy, encourage siting and construction and new development to take advantage of solar energy, minimize energy usage, and maximize opportunities for public transit. We have recommended conditions of approval. You could potentially, under 2, identify that the applicant should move the panels to the back 2/3, or potentially further adding the condition that like all panels are allowed on the back 2/3. Or the applicant could just choose to approve the proposal as is, and let the applicant just wait until the board changes the policy. Let's see. As always, board has the ability to approve the proposal and adopt the findings with the associated conditions, approve the proposal or modify the conditions, deny the proposal, and continue the hearing to a date certain to request additional information from the applicant. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to land it here, which I think will be the best, so I can move to any photo you want, but I'm available for any questions the board may have. Okay. I know the applicant's here this evening and be happy to kind of discuss options moving forward.
I didn't.
Oh, you're right.
Did I do that?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I will now ask each board member if they have visited the site and if they have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias to declare. Board Member Lawrence?
I have visited the site. I have no conflicts and no ex parte interest.
Board Member Powell?
No conflicts, no ex parte, and I did visit the site.
Board Member Edgar?
I have visited the site. I have had no ex parte contact. And I've not talked with anybody about it.
Board Member Green?
I have visited the site and no ex parte contact and no conflict of interest.
And I have also visited the site and have no ex parte conflict or conflict of interest. I would love to invite the applicant up right now.
And just make sure you speak right into the microphone because it's hard to pick up.
Excuse me while I move. Hello, I'm Terry Popino. This is George. We are the residents in the James and Sarah Roake house at 720 11th Street. And I'm so excited to be here. I'd never thought that living in the historic conservation district that we would ever be even considered for solar power. So I'm thrilled. And I told the fellow when he came to the door, I said, you know, I don't want to waste your time. We have very stringent guidelines on the exterior of our historic homes, and I don't think it's going to fly. And he pretty much talked me into listening to all of the good things that could happen with this. And I said, this is a no-brainer. And, you know, kind of like, what's the catch? And he goes, yeah, it really is. So it sounds like we're the test case for this. And I didn't study, but I'm very, very enthusiastic about this. So thank you for hearing this and having open minds and weighing the balance between the spirit of the code as well as the possibilities to leave a smaller footprint.
Well, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to know or us to know?
I think that it's, you know, Oregon City is known for our history and how much we cherish that history. But if you look around, some of the ways that we have made improvements in the core area, along the waterfront, the artwork that's our streetlights downtown, and everything from the bridge across the Clackamas coming into town has been so thoughtful and so well orchestrated that I've really been pleased with the city to approve things that seem a little cutting edge. You know, some of the lights downtown that have the different interior colors, those are whimsical and exquisite, and I'm delighted with them. And so I really think that we can set the tone for historic districts in other parts of the metro area and across the country in saying we can have a balance. We can have our historic architecture, structures, and we can also have green energy that those two can live together. So I encourage you to let us go with it. And it's just George and me in this house. I mean, it's way too big for us. The guys have grown and they've flown the coop, and I'm going to be building a little cabin outside of Estacada across the road from my grandparents' forest land. And it will have nothing but green power. And this house hopefully will have a family move into it when I sell it, because it's a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and it's got a lot of room in it. And those people are going to be using more power, I expect, than I have been. And so what I was talking about with the salesman was, okay, if it's 7 panels that cover the usage that I have now, what's the maximum that I can put on? And he said at the time that it was 9. And I said, well, let's do 9, because then the people who buy the house will be using the green power rather than the other kinds of power that's available. And I think that it's just being a good steward of our land. And so I don't know about moving panels forward and backward or adding more or taking some off, but I'd like to push it to the limit.
Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Do any board members have any questions for the applicant?
I do. First of all, ma'am, it's a breath of fresh air. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
As you stated, you don't know anything about the rules of whether they're going to be forward or backwards. Christine, can we pull up the shot of the radiance?
Yeah.
So in your discussions with your sales reps and your company, we've got The number one location, which I believe is the location in question, is there any reason to you why that location wouldn't be in a more radiant area of the house, aside from the rules, regulations, anything having to do with the Historic Review Board or the...
When you say radiant, producing more light?
Exactly. When you're looking at the roof pitches, the areas in the orange are going to produce more energy than the areas in the purple. Is there a reason why the number one location is where it is to you, not to the rules?
No.
Okay.
I left that to them because I wasn't sure what their studies would come up with. In fact, you know, if you're looking at it, it makes more sense. Although the house is on this east side, over the blackberry patch there.
We're talking about the Jackson Street side of the house?
Yes, thank you. Jefferson Street side. There is nothing to block the sun coming in on the east side, Jefferson Street side. And the other side is toward the river. And so that's the west side, and I don't care where they go. It would make more sense to put them where they do the maximum amount of good. But the Jefferson Street side's a little busy with the turret there.
Yep.
And I was just assuming that that's why they didn't put the panels. But I didn't look at it critically, because I thought with their knowledge of all that goes into making this assessment, they probably knew more than I did. I don't care where they go. I just would like to have them up there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Board Member Powell?
Terry?
Yes.
No questions for George, but for you, I do have a question. I'm wondering, in this process, did you, talking with your salespeople, the garage, if you look at this, the garage looks pretty good.
It does. It is one story, and it's a fairly shallow pitch on it. So I talked to them and said, you know, are we talking about putting it on the garage? Because I just assumed that would be where it would go. And they said, no, we don't need to put it on the garage. We can put it on the roof. So there wasn't a pointed discussion about where the better places are. And I think that it just has to do with maybe that the house might shade the garage a little bit more, but it doesn't. It looks like the garage is almost a little bit lighter than the western side of the house.
Well, right, and that's what I looked at, and to me, I mean, obviously our choice would probably be an auxiliary building if possible, rather than on the historic home itself. But
right.
I'm just curious. I mean, I would think you could get 9 panels on that roof on the garage pretty easily.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
And that would be a win-win if there's a walnut tree in the back corner on the lower left, and then when the sun starts going down, my house is shaded because of the hill behind me going up to 10th, and because of all the trees that are up there. So I don't know at what point. I'm assuming this is an aggregate of the hours of sunlight that fall upon the roof of my house. But if we could put the ones that are on the front of the house on the garage, I don't care if they're split. It doesn't matter to me. And it would be less noticeable as people are driving on 11th.
Well, and I mean, looking at your house, as I have many times, you know, from both up and below, I mean, you know, that with that light colored roof, you know, that's it's a big impact.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that looking at the garage to be the place to put it would be a good start.
Are you saying for all of them or just for the 2 in front?
Well, I'm thinking if he said he could do 9, and I don't know if that's because of the way it was structured here, but it seems to me that looking at this, you might be able to get more than that on the garage, and then it'd be a win-win, right?
It really would, because right now, I'd like to load her up and just send it all back to the grid so that I can provide power for other people. So, you know, if we decommission the Bonneville Dam for salmon or something in the future, and people are creating more energy than they're using, that I'd like to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking taking them off the front part of the west side, the garage side of the house, and putting them on the garage, yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, I'm not a solar person, but it just seems to me you have a perfect panel there, a panel carrier there. And
especially if you're looking at the colors.
yeah.
You know, I mean, it's kind of like tit for tat.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
We'd have to remove the moss that is on my garage,
Yeah.
but I'd be up for that too.
Board Member Edgar or Board Member Green?
Basically, I had the same question Board Member Lawrence had.
Mike,
I basically had the same question that Board Member Lawrence had, because as I looked at that number one array, the two-panel array, it seems like it would easily fit on the other side of the ridge where there's clearly better irradiance. And I was wondering if your contractor had a discussion with you about that, because it seems like that's kind of obvious from a power generation standpoint, and it would also be significantly more obscured from the street as well, behind the cupola there. So that seems like a win-win. I'm puzzled that they didn't address that or explain why that would not be good. Regarding putting them on the garage, I think I would kind of suspect that the cost of interconnecting, if they are going to have an array on the back of the house, interconnecting between the two buildings may push it where the economic viability is, particularly if there's only two panels. Now, if the whole solar installation was on the garage, that would be maybe a different issue, but it looks like the irradiance is not good enough to do it with the same number of panels. So it seems clear that the back of the house is the prime area for irradiance, but it also seems like the other side of the ridge is a kind of a prime area, and I'm puzzled that they put that one two-panel array on the west side instead of the east side.
I was too. And I'm not sure why we can't just have the whole south side of that roof have all of them. I don't know if it's not weight-bearing problems because they're fairly light, so I'm not sure why you can't just run a solar farm on the back side of the house.
Yeah, there's nothing that appears to me as an obstacle in the information that we see, and it just made me wonder if there was something that we don't see that he looked at and thought, no, it won't work there, but I don't know what it would be. I would think it would be good for you if indeed you get better power generation there, and good for the community in that it would be much less visible from the street, because there is a significant color difference, as you're aware, with your bright colored roof and the color of the panels. So.
I want to thank everyone for their contributions here. I have an agreement that the solar panel two rays should, if there's any reasonable way to move them to the other side, that would be appropriate. And number two is I look at the garage and say, wow, there's a lot of roof space there that has a lot of potential, and it has more potential than the two arrays on that one side of the roof. And to me, this is almost to the level of asking for a continuance where a review could be made. The house is beautiful, and it's important. And I think and I appreciate your concern and on it, and how that it's just one of those houses when you take a look at it and you say, this is important to Oregon City, okay? And I really would love to not have anything on that array one where it is. to me, that's, if it could be moved, that would be very important and would eliminate a lot of my feelings. It's not like I'm saying that there are objections, it's just,
Right.
if it could be done, I would love to find out why, if you could ask the contractor, the designer, why it couldn't be done in a continuous, and we would not want to try to make this any more difficult for you. But I think that's an important thing for us to find out.
No, I understand. I think that's a really good question because it would be a win-win if we could have it moved either to the Jefferson Street side or along the back, and then I'm fine with a continuance. I want it done well, you know, and especially if this is going to be the first one, we want it to fly. You know, we don't want to learn from mistakes that we've made or that we didn't go, you know, far enough with the decisions that were made here tonight. I think that this is the time to really do it well.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thanks.
Is there any other public testimony on this hearing?
There is not, and I have a suggested revised condition when if you're ready, or as you're deliberating. I've been kind of making some potential red lines.
How about we start with the revised condition and then we can all discuss?
Sure.
Or are you currently working on it still?
Oh, no, I have it.
Okay.
So this is condition of approval number 2. Hey, would you mind bringing up the presentation and going towards the second to last slide? So it sounds like, well, just to remind everybody, on a staff level through the building permit process, the applicant can put as many panels on the accessory building garage as they want. They can put the panels on the rear. So the board doesn't need to make any direction on that. It really is, do you want to specify the location of the, I guess, the panel array number 1? You kind of really have 3 options. Approve as proposed, move it farther down the kind of west side elevation, the interior front gable, flip it to the other side, kind of behind that, the turret on the Jefferson side of the front gable. So keep it, move it on the same plane of the roof, farther back, switch to the other side on the Jefferson Street side. So those are kind of really the 3 options you have. So I have a proposed, if you want to go to the Jefferson Street side, the applicant shall revise the final design to locate panel sections 1 to the back 2/3 of the east front gable, Jefferson Street elevation. So that's basically flipping it. And the reason why, it's really, because McLaughlin is northwest, southeast. Whenever we actually call it the northwest, south, everyone gets confused. So I'm trying to use Jefferson Street front gable so we all know what we're talking about. So that would be the revised condition. If you said, we want to flip it to the Jefferson side, we can write that condition. If at a later conversation with her installer, they found new panels to put that meet the type 1, they could add to that as long as it meets the type 1 staff level review. Like if they could sneak another panel in the rear, or they choose at a later date to put more panels on the accessory garage, that can happen on a type 1 level. Really, what you're providing direction to is that array number 1.
Christina, could you pull up, you had 2 photographs of both roof planes?
Yeah, with the stars.
Yeah. So they'd really be tucked sort of in that area behind the turret.
I don't have a good, because we weren't talking about that.
Yeah.
There you
Oh,
go.
there it is.
There we go. Yeah,
Yep.
so we do have it. It would be in that area between the turret and the back gable.
Do we, as board members, feel like this view is enough that we want to not put a solar array there?
I personally would prefer that they all on one plane, you know, if they can move that one back with the rest of them. If there's not a reason that can't happen, then I'd say we could go with this. But to me, it makes more sense to move everything onto one one plane, and that's that rear plane. Rather than have a single or a double right there, which I think is not a good thing.
Just to remind everybody that if the board adopts the code revisions for the policy, that this would be allowed
Yeah.
on a type 1 level.
Yeah.
I feel like if moving forward with solar energy, the most important thing that we can look at, aside from the home, is the effectiveness. And so if we're going to have the panels, then we want, if we're going to put the panels on the house, then we want them to be in the most effective places on the house. There's no reason to put them places at all if they're not going to be effective. We might as well just not have them.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, it does seem like we're missing some information here. As a builder, I feel like there's a reason why someone didn't propose putting 9, 10, 11, 12 panels on the back side of this house. Because from the drawings that we've seen and from looking at the house, it seems like we could load that whole back side of the house where the proposed number 2 array is and have an effective array. So I have to think that there's a reason why. There's some kind of structure inside the attic. There's something going on that's causing it to have that first initial number 1 array up on the front south side of the house. The idea of putting them on the accessory dwelling is great. In this picture especially, we're looking at just a blast of sunlight on there. Now, of course, we've got an aggregate view with our coloration vary on our radiation. However, there's a cost associated with running 200 or 300 amp service back to the house from that. And that might be an issue as well, but it just seems like a lot of missing information. Is that an issue? Is that something? I almost wish that the solar rep was here tonight, because we could ask direct questions where we'd say, hey, what were your findings? How do you come up with this plan? Because it doesn't seem sensible that we would have this minimalized 2-panel array on the front corner of the house and then this large array in the back, or why we wouldn't be taking advantage of a situation where we could put 15 panels on the additional unit. So it would really be tough. If we were going to put panels in the house, I would vote to put them on the back side of that cupola and say, let's take advantage of the sunlight. On the other hand, I don't want to put panels there if there's not a reason that defines that they have to be there. Right. If we can take advantage of more power elsewhere. So I really think that we're missing some information.
I was sorry, guys. I was just going to say, perhaps it's because of taking advantage of different daytimes and light conditions, but I do think that it's just important to note that, as Christina said, if we do approve what we've been talking about as far as solar array applications going to type 1 as opposed to type 3, then, maybe the condition that we would like to set is just the back 2/3 of that, front gable. Because that way they could put it on this side, they could put it on the other side, depending on what makes the most sense from a solar technician approved, procedure. And then that way we could also just sort of follow our discussions as far as what we've discussed. Because there could be some other structural reason that they don't want to stick it there, or maybe there's not enough space to connect whatever. I have no idea, but.
In a continuance, could the solar contractor come in and tell us why?
I don't know if we need a continuance, though, because,
I'm wondering if the direction we're heading with this, I think we agree we're missing some important information, but a continuance pushes it down with a time frame that maybe could be eliminated if the contractor agrees that, yeah, we can do that. So I guess I'm wondering if an approval with revised conditions that the solar arrays either be combined on the back plane of the house or between the back plane and the east plane. And then if the contractor, if there's no compelling reason that that 2-panel array can't be moved over to the east side, it seems then they could just go forward. Would that be a reasonable approach?
I think so. It sounds reasonable.
I know the applicant would like to add another comment. We can, if the board wants to, we can open up discussion. I think she wanted to add one more thing, if that would be helpful.
Sure, I think since there's no public testimony, I think that we could open it back up too.
One thing that did occur to me, could we get the actual picture of the roof of the house from the back? Because there used to be a chimney, and I'm thinking it might be between those two sections. And they removed the chimney and put on a new roof, but I don't know if the chimney structure itself is in the eaves of the attic. And that might be the reason. Although my understanding of how these things work is that they clip on and aren't affixed all the way through the roof. Is there a picture like that?
I think, Kay, would you mind advancing the next slide?
Okay.
There we go. Is that, yeah, there we go.
I don't know if you can see, I cannot, but the roof is a different color. It's down toward the wall of the back of the house, and that's where the chimney used to be. But the chimney's not in the house anymore. On the main floor, there's no chimney there, so I'm assuming that the whole thing was removed. But that might be a consideration for why they did that. Otherwise, carry on, and thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll close public testimony again.
So if we did approve it with the revised condition, if they can meet that, they could go forward, but if they can't meet that, they can always come back, and then at least they would not have lost the time of a continuance. Am I correct on that? Well,
but here's the thing is that if we're going to move forward later in this meeting with the revised solar thing the revised solar conditions that we've talked about, where they can put it on the back 2/3 without having to come before us, then maybe what we're looking at is either we want to have control over that, or we could just say that's our condition, and you can flip it from one side to the other or whatever, as long as it's on the back 2/3 of that front gable. Because
honestly, to me, putting it on the back 2/3 doesn't make much difference, because you just see that, and it's 2 or 3 feet further back. In my view, the issue, you might say, from the historic preservation or the appearance aspect, is it would be clearly better to be on the other side of the ridge. If that was an ask for much poorer performance, we would be a little squeamish, but it looks like it's an ask for better performance, and that's the puzzle. In my mind, I think it's a reasonable ask to just ask that those 2-panel array be moved to the other side of the ridge or added to the back.
I think what Chair Ferry is getting at, though, also is that we have a situation where we're trying to make a staff level condition. And so if we say that it has to be that 2/3 back, then that's the rule, and that's what we're moving forward with. And then we're not going to be part of this conversation moving forward. And so the ability to choose between, even with the improved performance perceivably, it would no longer come to the Historic Review Board if we make these decisions. So we're kind of at a really big crossroads here with, if we say, here's where we're drawing the line, we're not going to have this conversation next time. It's going to be where it's going to be. And this is a really interesting case, I think, moving into the rest of the evening, because I feel like everybody here wants to see the best performance and the best, advancements moving forward, and nobody's been arguing since I've been part of this board that this isn't, progression. But if we can create a situation where these are staff level situations, then that's what they are. And we won't, again, have this conversation. And so whether it's 2-3 feet back, I totally agree. It's just 2 or 3 feet back, but it's a condition that we're not gonna tell anybody to move it one side or the other moving forward. So we have to be careful, where we go with this, and whether we want to have that, perceived, condition moving forward, that power to say, hey, this is a board level review versus staff level review.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, solar technicians have so many more details than we have, and they can read their maps, and they might have a very good reason why they decided to put it on that side. I do agree that it would be great if it could all be on the back of the house, but I think that if we're going to move forward with what we had discussed, it's possible that we should stick with that sort of system rather than, asking for more information or for them to come back with a different configuration.
I'm just, I don't like the 2 panels on the one, on that side. Personally, it has enough detracting from the appearance sake of an important, the way the roof appears and everything, the way you see it coming up the street to the house. And I like Commissioner Board Member Green's analogy that I think that if it could be moved across, that would be absolutely acceptable to me, flipping the 2 panels. And but again, if they could maximize more on that backside roof, that would be great too.
Well, here's just another thought, is that it's possible that the reason they put it on the other side of the house is that, as you're moving down Jefferson Street, you do sort of see that back array, and then you see the side array with the turret, and it feels probably very heavy with solar panels, whereas if you have that other sort of array on the south side, maybe it feels like, oh, we've got some solar panels here, and oh, coming up the street we have a couple of solar panels, but it's not such a heavy mass of solar panels in one area. It doesn't feel as congested.
Yeah, it's possible. I rather expect myself that it has something to do with the building, because they would, I think, normally tend to group them together and get in one array that would be cost effective. So I think the fact that the 2 more are appearing elsewhere, in my mind, suggests that they've crowded that south portion as much as they think they can. So in that the applicant wants to get the extra benefit of 2 more panels, I get that for sure. But boy, they're going to be quite obvious on the west side there, and seemingly more productive on the east side. It's really a puzzle. I mean, I guess I would feel like it should be nudged in that direction.
I'll just say one more thing if I could, and that is, all throughout this process where we've been talking about solar, one of the big concerns we've all had is having these little disparate panels all over the roof. We wanted to combine them as much as we possibly could for looks, So that's something else. And here we're facing our first one where it's going to be totally separated like that. So, I don't care for the look, personally. I think on a historic home, I think it makes more sense to combine them. But maybe we can't. You're right, we don't have the information. So, I mean, if we want to move forward with something, then I support your, Board Member Green's idea of recommending that it go on the back, and if it can't, then go on the Jefferson side.
Should we float a motion in that direction? And I guess I would.
Maybe we should let Christina
Are we ready for a motion then, Christina? Oh,
Okay. I think it's the same condition. I just added a couple more words. The applicant shall revise the final design to locate panel sections 1 to the back 2/3 of the east side front gable, Jefferson Street elevation, or add it to the rear array.
No,
That
that
doesn't
doesn't move them to the other side of the ridge, not just move them back to the back 2/3.
Well, no, so the Jefferson Street is moving it to the other side of the ridge.
Yeah. Moving to the Jefferson Street side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's reasonable to me, is to get it on the Jefferson Street side, and even in that position, it's already gonna be back, the 2/3.
Yeah.
Way back from the 2/3. So that would meet our requirements, our concerns.
So if, for some reason they can't put that 2-panel array on the Jefferson side next to the turret, does the applicant need to come back before us to try and get it on the other side, or I'm just asking my fellow board members?
Sure, I mean, this brings up the point, and I know these are two separate agenda items that we are talking about, this one and the land, which is land use application and upcoming future policy, but to play out the what-ifs, if the applicant can't move it to the other side, they need to find, and today, May 2024, they need to find another option that's a type 1 review. If they don't have a type 1 review, then they either wait for a future HRB policy revision, or they come back to the board.
I think so, because the way that number 1 sits now, it's not in the back 2/3. So we're solving both parts with our motion. And then, yeah, I think it does have to come back. If we find out that they did their review and say, hey, no, we can't move this, then it either doesn't happen or we have to review that again, specifically with more information.
But do we want to make it so that they, if they can't put it there, that they could move it into the back 2/3 and it would be acceptable?
I mean, that's a choice of the board. So if the board, maybe, we don't know how you all are going to decide in our next agenda item.
Yeah.
But if you were you, if you approve the revised standards for solar panel, the revised HRB policy 12, it'll probably get formally approved by the board late summer, early fall. All type 1, all building permits that meet that will be processed as a type 1. You may have other revisions in your head, but just as is. If the applicant cannot move array number 1 to the Jefferson Street side, they will need to decide if they want to locate it to something that meets the policy today, or wait to see what the new policy is adopted if they have more options.
Okay.
And then once the decision is made, their option is to appeal within 14 days. City Commission, not a great idea, but, or they would reapply as a brand new application.
Well, it just sounds like they want to get the most they can out of this, and they're really supportive of solar, and we want to be supportive of solar too. So I was just hoping maybe for the board, if we could come together and say, well, perhaps it's not so terrible to have it in the back 2/3, and if they cannot, the board would prefer if they could put it on the Jefferson side with the turret. But if there's a circumstance where it cannot be put there or on the back of the house with the majority of the array, that it would be acceptable so that our applicant can move forward as long as it's in the back 2/3. Because really, I don't know. I guess I'm alone in thinking that it's not that awful.
I don't disagree with you. I think you're saying the right thing. But I think by us moving it to the Jefferson side, we're actually increasing her benefit. We're increasing the applicant's benefit by putting more sun and giving you better generation.
Yes.
If it's possible.
If it's possible.
Yeah, if it's possible, right. But also we're doing that if it moves to the back.
Yeah,
If
but
it's
it
possible.
could also move what Chair Ferry's saying that there might be a condition where on the plane that it's currently at, it would only have to move back to that 2/3, and that would still be acceptable, and we could still move forward with allowing this to happen.
So, one thing is occurring to me, we're mixing to some extent this particular application with a potential tweak of the requirements. And the tweak of the requirements essentially would just relax panel placement to whatever we decide that can be approved at a staff level. So if we approve this particular application with the revised requirements that the two panels move to the other side of the ridge, and subsequently we decide that they're okay, that the staff level can approve it, if they're on the back 2/3, they can still do that if we approve that tweak in the code. So it seems to me that this particular application, we could approve with revised findings to move the 2-panel array to the other side of the ridge, or to the back portion of the house where the rest of the panels are, and that may work for them. And if it doesn't, and we decide that staff can approve panel arrays that are 2/3 back, they can come back and get it approved at staff level. Does that make sense?
Of course it does, but then they have to wait till the end of the summer to do anything.
What was that again?
They would have to wait till the end of the summer, possibly, to do anything
to do
about
that.
it.
But they could come back to the board, could they not?
They could. I think they should also wait to the next agenda item to see what your recommendations are.
In other words, if there is some compelling information, we seem to be missing information. If there was some compelling information that came back, very likely our verdict would be different. But I mean, with the information that's presented to us at this point, I would like to see those panels on the other side of the ridge myself.
Right, and really the only risk is if for some reason we did not approve this second portion of this meeting,
Yeah,
right? I mean, then they'd have to come back to us. But I don't,
yeah. So I guess, in my mind, and this may not fly, but I would make a motion to approve the application with revised restrictions that the 2-panel array on the east side would be moved, or excuse me, the 2-panel array that are shown on the west side would be moved to the east side of the ridge or back to the south side with the rest of the panels.
I would second it.
Does that work, Christina?
Yeah, that's basically what I have is the applicant shall revise the final design to locate the west panel sections 1 to the back 2/3 of the east side front gable, Jefferson Street elevation, or add to the rear array.
No, we're not saying move them back to the back 2/3. We're saying that the 2-panel array that is on the west side would be moved to the east side, the other side of the ridge, or to the south slope with the rest of the panels.
Yeah, I think we're just using different words. So you want to say relocate. I'm going to say relocate instead of locate. To relocate the panel section 1 on the west facing gable, front gable, to the back 2/3 of the east side front gable, which is the Jefferson Street elevation, or add to the rear array.
Yeah.
I thought Board Member Green was asking to remove the 2/3 from the language.
Well, I don't see that the 2/3 really plays a part in this case, because it would need to, the only place it could physically be located on the east side of the ridge would be between the cupola and the back ridge. So, I mean, there's really only one place that it could be.
Yeah, yes.
I'm going to say behind the cupola, just to I think I think it's important to still designate where on the east side gable. So if it's important to be behind the cupola, then I'll just say it, relocate it behind the cupola on the,
I would just say between the cupola and the ridge behind.
okay. Okay. The applicant shall revise the final design to relocate panel section 1 on the the west facing front gable. Relocate panel section 1 on the west facing front gable to the back of the east side. Sorry. Absolutely reduced the size of my slide, sorry. Okay. The applicant shall revise the final design to relocate panel section 1 of the west-facing front gable to the back of the east side front gable behind the cupola and the ridge, Jefferson Street elevation, or add to the rear array.
Yeah.
So that's revised condition approval number 2.
Yes.
Okay.
And I second it.
I'll call the vote. Board Member Green.
Aye.
Board Member Edgar.
Aye.
Board Member Lawrence.
Aye.
Vice Chair Powell.
Aye. Aye.
Chair Ferry.
Aye.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you so much.
I will send out a notice to you, and you can just work directly with Jude and the building department to move through your process.
Have a great night. Thank you. Sorry. All right, so that closes the public hearing testimony, or public hearing portion of the meeting. And we will move on to other business. So we have improving the historic review approval process for the revised HRD policy number 12 solar panels. Do you
I just have 3 slides, was just, we'll have up on the board, the screen, what you have in your packet. The first slide talks a little bit about next steps. So just to remind everybody in the audience and on our audience online, revising or revisiting the HRB policy number 12 solar panels was on the board's work plan. So kind of spent many months kind of muscling through the implications of what it means and how to balance historic preservation and compatible additions to historic buildings, along with climate goals for the community. I thought this also was really initiated by a presentation that the board went through at camp, which was a one-day education kind of seminar put on by the National Association of Preservation, National Association of Preservation Commissions. And one piece of information that was presented to us by a planner from the city of Denver was that solar panels are attached to the building and can be detached from the building as technology changes. And whatever we do, we just make sure that any attachment should not affect the historic materials, the architecture shouldn't be removing things, but really seeing this as a temporary approach to our energy needs. So that was a kind of an interesting way to think about it, that I hadn't really thought about it before. And so the board, over the last couple months, have talked about the policies and should there be additional options given to folks through the type 1 process. At the March meeting, there was kind of initial direction given, and I'll go through the recommended red line for the policy. If the board tentatively approves the recommended policy change tonight, then I would request that at least one board member come with me to the McLaughlin and Kenema Neighbor Associations to make a presentation of the recommended changes. Then present at a city commission work session, kind of things, while the board has the ability to approve revisions to the HRB policies, they kind of get run up and discussed with the city commission, because the board kind of, the board really is at the pleasure of the city commission, our elected officials, and we like to make sure that HRB policies are consistent with city commission goals. So with that conversation, if there's an agreement that that is something that the board should pursue, then the board at the next meeting would adopt revisions by resolution. And you just did this last year, the same process, when you made revisions to the middle housing design guidelines for new construction. So same thing, tentative approval by the board, work session with the city commission, come back for a formal adoption. I might need Kay to press the button. No, there we go. Actually, I'm going to skip to do this first slide first. So I have a recommendation based on direction at the last March meeting was to amend just the section about location, right? The rest of the policies aren't proposed to be revised. And that I'm going to read. Solar panels are permitted on secondary facades of historic buildings, comma, accessory structures, and the rear 2/3 of a primary side gable roof. Note, porch dimensions are not included in this calculation. Solar panels on primary gable shall be set back from the roof peak 3 feet. So that was based on conversation and direction at the last meeting, can be revised again tonight. I want to show you the other slide, and that is knowing that there's still always going to be folks. Hey, would you mind doing the, there we go. Maybe mine is working, there you go. Knowing that folks at some point may come back to the board with proposals that don't meet a type 1 process, it is very helpful for the board to have guidelines to help guide your decision making. Because right now you're kind of, you don't have specific guidelines for solar panels, so you're kind of grabbing anything applicable, and it's not helpful. So I have just kind of generalized recommendations to add to the design guidelines for alterations, which is a specific call out box that's just added to the packet, and recommend that, you know, people limit retrofitting measures to those that achieve reasonable energy savings at a reasonable cost with least intrusion or impact on the character of the building. So really that is telling the applicant and the solar installer, please provide information in your packet that answers that question, which I think we heard a little bit tonight, didn't quite have what you needed, but we also didn't tell them this is the criteria they need to, you know, respond to. 2, really specifically saying, please show that you've investigated all options allowed in the HRB policy 12 on a staff level. It was a little bit of an alternative analysis. Why couldn't you just do what's allowed on the staff level? Why are you coming to us tonight? So just really explicitly, I'm imagining in the future, if someone comes in from the board, they have a question for those 1 and 2 statements. And then not recommended is just your general statements that the board's not going to approve something where you have removal of historic roofing materials during the installation of solar systems. I don't think we have much historic roofing materials left, but if we did, there. Removing or otherwise altering historic roof configurations, dormers, chimneys, or other features to add solar system, and any other installation procedure that would cause irreversible change to historic features or materials. So you have recommended, which is do your due diligence, show your alternative approach, show why you can't just meet the policy. And it may be that the house orientation is wrong to meet the HRB policy, and this is why we need it. So we have the criteria for approval now. So between the revised condition, the revised red lines for solar panel, and the addition of actual criteria for approval for the board if things go in front of them, these were the 2 things that would get tentatively approved and then formally approved after a city commission work session. But hearing your conversation tonight, I don't know if all 5 of you are ready to approve this. Because this is an example of one that would be approved on a staff level. So I think tonight, what I'm really looking forward in front of the board is, do you concur that this is where you want to see these these policies moving forward? And if not, did this previous hearing give you pause on your previous direction you gave me in March? So, as always, no decision has to be made tonight, but once direction is given, those are the next steps. Go in front of the neighborhood association, make a presentation in front of the city commission.
And it's not how it came before us tonight, but if they had moved it to the back 2/3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so not exactly as it was presented.
Yeah, it would be, but at that array number 1, if it was just slightly moved back, that could be done at a staff level.
Yeah.
I have a question on, when we're talking about not extending panels up to closer to 3 feet to the peak of the roof. My question is the desire, if I understand it, is to make the panels kind of blend in and disappear so that they're not detracting. And if they were to go up higher, but maybe just below the peak, but I'm wondering if 3 feet is arbitrary, and that maybe they could go up higher, and we could then have more panels on a roof surface, my hope is that if we can put them together and not have this patchwork of stuff that, to me, detracts, it's more of a win-win. And so
the 3-foot setback is not from the ridge, it's from the gable. So the panels can go up near the ridge, correct?
No, actually, that was based on direction from the board in March. So if you disagree, and let me, sorry, so as I have it, I have it written, and this is good, this conversation is, solar panels on primary gables shall be set back from the roof peak 3 feet. So that is saying a setback. And what I'm hearing from board member Edgar is maybe not directly at the peak to make sure that the architecture of the roof is, continued, but what's the least amount the board should set as a reduction from the top of the peak that still allows the roof architecture to be defined, but gives that elevation of the gable the most solar panel space.
Can you bring up the slide with the blue house on the
Sure.
12?
Yeah, let me go to, that would be, is that on the HRB policy?
Yeah.
Hey, if you go
Page
to
2.
the agenda packet and you see the proposed red lines for the HRB policy, and there's a,
The 3-foot is here, not there, the way I've seen it.
I thought I read it that it was at
That's what Christina said, yeah.
the ridge. And so the desirability is to maximize the solar panels in a way that is least detracting.
Yeah, I wasn't here for the last meeting, but I would agree that I don't see why it would need to be that far from the ridge.
Yeah.
As long as it's not peeking over, right?
Yeah, as long as they
You
don't.
can't go up near the ridge, you're not going to get what you need. Usually.
There's a question, math equation though, where if you are no more than 5 inches from the roof surface at anywhere between 7 and 9 inches from the roof peak, you have a potential for looking over the roof and seeing a flat roof. Because you'd have to be more than 12 to 14 inches down from the roof peak in order for the 5 inches not to impede the angle of the roof visually.
Yeah, I think functionally they would need to be down enough from the ridge that they don't appear over the ridge.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on, especially in Oregon
Yeah.
City, where, we could potentially be on one street looking at the very top of a roof on just a house down from where we're standing.
There you go. There's the
Aesthetically.
picture. The upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah. And that's from looking below. Right.
The interesting thing is that I see anomalies in almost all the pictures, and I see ambiguity in the text, and it's not clearing up in that we refer to primary gables, side gables. And if you look at the block drawings that is in, I think they came from the Denver thing, they identify a side gable roof, which would be with the ridge parallel to the street, so your gables are on the sides. So if you identify that as a side gable roof, a front gable roof would be one where the ridge is perpendicular to the street, so you've got a gable in the front. But with language with primary gables, going back to that picture that we're looking at there, that is shown as an approved.
That's actually the secondary gable.
No, but I mean, it was in the Denver ones. In other words, we're looking at this language and so forth, and it's referring to installing, it says install solar panels on secondary facades and has a check mark. In other words, that's supposedly a good example of it. But when you look at that, number one, you don't know where the street is. The assumption is that the street is, that you're viewing it from the street, but you see where those panels are mounted, that ridge is higher than the ridge that's protruding forward. So that is the whole of the building. I think it would be questionable if that's even a secondary facade. So we have some terminology ambiguity. So with the possible rewrite, we have that solar panels would be permitted on the rear 2/3 of a primary side gable roof, but I'm not sure what that is. And solar panels on primary gables should be set back 3 foot from the roof peak. And as I've looked at the presentations that and so forth that Denver did and so forth, they seem to be talking about how far they're going to set that back. And that's about a 3 foot setback from the gable, from the face of the gable. But you wouldn't have really room for solar panels there if you were 3 feet down from the ridge.
2 solar panels, yeah.
What's that?
You'd be down to 2 solar panels.
Yeah. So I think the discussion is how close can they come to the gable end, and then what is a primary gable?
Well, and that's at 6'6" or 6'12", we're at 13 inches before it impedes pitch.
Right.
So that's just math.
Right.
And I think in Oregon City that we don't have anything that's not those 2 roof pitches on any of our historic buildings. So I'd be safe to say that if we said, 12, 13, 14 inches, somewhere in that realm.
Down from the ridge.
Down from the peak, we could make that a rule that would allow what we're seeing here with no issue.
But the issue, I think, that this discussion is, okay, can it be 3 feet back from the front rake? Should it be 5 or 10 feet back from the front rake? Should it be in the back 2/3 of the rake? And this would be, of course, something that as a panel we would review and have guidelines to go by, but making the decision what is a staff review and what comes to HRB, it needs to be very clear, I think, without ambiguity. The other little incidental, and it maybe isn't quite so incidental, I mean, technically, I know we're only talking in this discussion about panel placement, but there's a paragraph there for colors, and it says panels and mounting systems shall be the same color as established roof materials. So to me, that tells me that this application that we just had tonight would have to be a type 3 no matter what, because staff could only approve panels on a black or a very dark gray roof if that paragraph stays in regarding color. So we've got taller cotton here than maybe we were considering. I mean, I see ambiguities in each of the pictures. Photographs, block diagrams are easier to control for clarity. That doesn't tell the public very much. They can't necessarily visualize quite as well. Photographs are good, but unless the photographs are not out of compliance in any fashion, then they probably shouldn't be used, because if you say, well, we're showing this part, this is good, but this part is not good, then, you got confusion.
It's tough, too, to try to avoid bureaucracy, right? I mean, we want to make a rule if we could. So that, we're all volunteers, but not everyone, and not the building lights, and not the building, and not the people in front of us, and not everything else, and not the fees. So we want to make sure that we aren't dragging people in to have these types of reviews, but at the same time, you're completely correct. There's a lot of ambiguity in here that we might not have foreseen.
I'm in agreement.
So I've got a question, Christina, regarding, you might say, process and so forth. I've expressed that I've been a little leery of churning this pot if this requires, public notification and a significant procedure when there's a lot of other things on the agenda. I like the paragraph that you just showed that referred people and clarified you don't tear off materials, I think, if something like that can be added in, generally speaking, our guidelines, I don't think, are far off. I mean, there's a lot of cleanup and a little detail, but I'm not seeing that we're having a huge problem at this point of being overwhelmed as a board with applications that should have been taken care of at staff level. If we were, then that would be a little different set of circumstances, but so far that hasn't been the case, and I wonder if we shouldn't largely stick with what we have, unless there's a compelling reason to. I mean, I guess I'm leery of launching into something that requires a lot of staff work and public notification and things like that to clean this up, and then that would require time on our part as well. I mean, when we have other things on the agenda, but
I think then in the future, it would actually clear up staff time and board time, right? If we approve it and it moves forward, then it will make it easier for these sort of applications to go through without a lot of deliberation and staff time.
In other words, by
loosening sort of
making the tweaks, the wording tweaks.
Yeah. It would be sort of
if we're going to make them, I see several that need to be made. I mean, I think it's not something that I'm not seeing myself something I'm comfortable with. Yeah, let's throw in that red line thing, because to me it's not clear at this point. I mean, we've got...
Right, but we're here to talk about that, right? I mean, that's what we're here to discuss, and if we want to tweak it, we could. I mean, I noted that it says the rear 2/3 of a primary side gable roof, and it should actually probably be a front gable roof, because the peak of the roof is actually facing the street, right? The triangular part of a gable roof is what you're looking at the front of the house, and that is a front gable roof, not a side gable roof. And I brought McAllister's in case we need to verify, but I did bring it.
I flipped them in my head.
Yeah. So it's a front gable roof, and so that needs to be changed. I like that the porch dimensions are not included in that, so you can't measure from the front of the porch for that front 2/3. And then I think that the picture that you're talking about, I know that house well. We call it the Frog House. It's got the golf game. That's considered a secondary location? Or a secondary,
The one that
the one that Board Member Green has been discussing,
yes,
right?
yes. Where I have the X, I X'd out the top.
Right,
photo.
the first picture.
Yeah, because that actually wouldn't meet the policy.
Because it's not the back 2/3.
Correct.
Yeah. But this one that Board Member Green's pointed out, I mean, that would be approved on a staff level anyway. That wouldn't be something that we would discuss.
Correct.
So,
Then the yellow house in the lower corner, that one, you don't know where the street orientation is, so I'm assuming we're looking at the left elevation of that house and the street is out front, but we don't know that. So you look at that panel array and they're within about 1.5 feet of the rake, the gable, and up near the ridge again. But the discussion about how far back they are, I mean, I've always interpreted it based, I think, on what I was seeing in the camp presentation and other materials, that discussion is how far back from the rake, not how far down from the ridge. I think that you know, that point needs to be clarified, but I think that including the block diagrams would be very helpful, because the block diagrams that came from the Denver thing, that clearly identifies a side gable roof. So then street facing facade, the street facing slope would never be a type 1 approval. That would always come to staff. So then the front gable roofs, there again, if the block diagram, that shows it fairly clearly, and they might be showing it there again near the ridge, but 3 feet back, 5 or 10 feet back 2/3. Honestly, it doesn't bother me if it's even only 3 feet. I mean, this block diagram, like Board Member Egger mentioned, we would like to see as continuous and unbroken an array as possible. So I don't have a big problem with them being necessarily even back on the 2/3. But then when we talk about primary gable and side gable, then what are we talking about? I mean, the side gable house, I get that, but so in that rewrite, what do I got here? Something different. In that rewrite, it says that the rear 2/3 of a primary side gable roof. Well, a side gable roof, as defined in that block diagram, there is no rear 2/3. It's the back of the building or the front of the building.
Sorry, when I wrote it, I had opposite in my head. So it should say side, it should say front gable roof.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would say the rear 2/3 of a primary front gable roof. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, apologize. When you have those opposite times in your brain, and I wrote the wrong thing.
Okay. Then solar panels, what would the reference of primary gables then be?
Well, so if you look at the blue house, that's a cross gable roof. So the secondary, the back part, that's not the primary gable, that's the secondary gable of a cross gabled house. So either side of that secondary gable would be allowed already. So
So you would be, in other words, saying that you're okay with them in 3 feet on a secondary gable, but this says primary gable.
Right, no, but secondary gables are already allowed. So a secondary gable is a secondary facade, right? So you're at the second.
Okay. And that picture is ambiguous, because I think there would be some question if that is actually a secondary facade.
Because
the ridge is higher. I think that's the whole building, but as long as we understand what is being, in other words, what the configuration that we're talking about, and maybe a block diagram to illustrate it in each case, you know, this is what a secondary gable is, or a primary.
Is there a question with the primary versus secondary gable being street facing? And then is there a problem with corner
Exactly.
lots versus
Exactly.
intermediate lots, right? So
The more you
what
try
you're-
to describe it,
You're
the deeper
saying
water you get.
the higher that roof pitch makes the primary building structure, but then if we're on a corner lot, which one is the primary gable end? If it, say they were even, and we were in a vernacular with cross gable,
Yeah.
which side then is the primary gable?
Right, because my house as an example, I have two street-facing gables, so it's a gable-facing roof, but there's a primary gable, which is the main house, and a secondary gable, which is the smaller one over the garage. So I would look at that, okay, well, this is a primary gable and that's a secondary gable, but if it's a cross gable, and which one is higher and so forth, it becomes a little confusing, so.
I have a hip roof, I don't have to worry about it.
Is that information that you all need more definition on? Is that something that you would like to see brought back if we were to bring back a revised red line and then some illustrations that say this is a primary front gable, this is a secondary front gable? Would that be helpful?
Well, I actually do think that Board Member Green has a point. When you look at the photographs that are included in Policy 12, when you've got such a close-in view of the solar panels, it is hard to determine where they are located on the house. So perhaps just getting some photographs that step back a little and show like the front elevation, so you can see what's a secondary elevation and what's a primary elevation.
So, just a technical point. This is an illustrated guide that helps people implement the HRV policy, which will be a written paragraph. The board can choose to adopt in that written paragraph, like specific diagrams, like almost think like code. You know, sometimes code adopts specific diagrams, and that could be the specific thing. This is just a graphic design to help people. So, you know, as staff level in concurrence with the board, I could change out any photo in this. It's not changing HRB Policy 12.
Okay.
So this is just an illustrative, you know, handbook for folks. So, yeah, we can absolutely look at new photos that show better street orientation for the graphic design. So I assume we'll have to relay out this document when it's all done. And that can be done, you know, even after the HRB policy is adopted. We can work on what photos we like or what we want to do. But I think this conversation of what is a primary gable and what is a secondary gable is actually, I think, really good. And I don't know if it necessarily is incorporated in this discussion, because what happens when you have two gables that are tied? You know, what happens if it's you know, the first part of the gable is maybe even short, and then you have when you have the T part, the long part of the T is really short, but then the back part is quite long. What is the primary gable? I think in some architecture, there may be a question. So that may be a thing to take a look at, like, because what I'm hearing from you is that cross-gabled architecture where the rear gable is pretty prominent and really is, you know, that roof plane that faces the street in a prominent secondary gable, is that have a different, you know.
Yeah, and there's also the question of corner layouts and street facing.
Right.
We potentially have 4 planes
Yeah.
that are out of bounds.
I think the restricting this to can you see it or not really restricts, that's going the opposite direction of kind of the goal of these guidelines. So if there are concerns about, if we just allowed, solar panels on these secondary gables that face the street, is that okay? Or when is it not okay? I think the second piece I'm hearing, which is not in this set of red lines, is I'm hearing from folks, I want to make sure that the panels are more grouped together, and I don't want arrays all over the place. And that, none of those red lines speak to that conversation, because you could have arrays all over the place that, today you could have arrays all over the place that meet the section, and you could have it again. One thing we could do is, once again, not part of HRB Policy 12, but we can integrate all that wording from the design guidelines for alterations back in the narrative of Policy 12. Like, applicants should be looking at this, and applicants should be, investigating all options, and we can integrate that in just to help get people in the right place. That's good background information, but does that help solidify kind of what your concerns are, what you're thinking of, and what you want to see in a revised version?
I would love to see the descriptions like Denver did, depicting the best way we can, so visually somebody can take a look at a picture and get 90% of it figured out. I think that Denver did a good job to try to at least help clean it up.
They did, except I saw several puzzling things in what they approved and didn't approve, and that's why I thought, I'm not sure that we want to just adopt everything they did.
Right, I agree.
Some of them that they showed, and I'd have to go back and find it, and you folks have looked at it, but they showed approved pictures that, had two panels down here and kind of a jumble of panels around vents and stuff like that, and they approved that, and yet they showed one where the panel array was probably only 2 feet back from the rake, and this one is that way and is showing, you might say, a green check. We don't know what the street orientation is or anything like that, but they said not approved because it's too close. I looked at that, it was a nice clean array, and it was, maybe 2 feet back from the rake. I thought, that to me looks good and the others don't, and yet they had that one no good and the other one's good. So we got to be careful with policy that that is,
yes.
And of course, at the end of the day, that's why we have a board, because if it doesn't meet the guidelines, it comes here and we hash it out and we try to stay within guidelines and so forth. What we would like to do is separate clearly, so what can be approved at staff level and move through, that would be ideal. But we, the direction we started on this was, okay, let's start looking at arrays that can be approved at staff level. I'm not sure we found them yet. I don't know that we've cleaned up our language enough. One thing about secondary, in my view, secondary, if nothing else, ridge height would, to me, be an indication of a secondary roof plane versus a primary roof plane. I mean, if one ridge is somewhat higher than the other, and that picture, the blue one, is one that I question because it is set back. A lot of building is in front of that, but yet the ridge is clearly higher. So if you could see the rest of that building, it very much may appear that, I mean, in my mind, what I see there, I would not identify that as a secondary roof plane because the ridge is higher, so we want to be careful with language that's confusing to the public as well and can't be explained.
So we could, I'll just jump in, Christina, and you let me know if I went too far, but we could bring back the revised guidelines and policy with the wording changed a bit. We can put in new photos, and then kind of separately, but would feed into these documents, try to define what we mean by a front, side, primary, secondary gables. And then it sounds like maybe we want to have some discussion of how those primary gables, whether it's front facing or side facing, but want to have some discussion of how the primary gable interacts with the street, like how much street presence does it have? That's one thing that I'm hearing as well, so.
I think that's important.
Maybe we can package that up for more discussion.
This doesn't seem ripe yet, which is fine. I will do my best to kind of mock up a revised, a PDF, but just know that I'll identify what you're actually adopting. But I'll provide some better, and I'll look through the diagrams from Denver. They may need to be revised a little bit, so I might have some mock-up if there was revision related to, we want to move a block or identify something with dimensions. Once again, this isn't a public hearing, so feel free to email me with any of your suggestions after the meeting in the next couple weeks. I will take them all in. Do not CC your board members. Send it to me directly via my Oregon City email.
So that was my question, is if we can find photos or anything that would be helpful, we can feed it into you? Yeah.
If there's any diagram, if there's any specific wording, if you have a recommended red line, send it all to me.
Okay.
The more direction you can give me, the easier my job is.
And then I think that we all sort of just briefly discussed, the 3-foot standard from the ridge line. Like, I think we all thought perhaps maybe 12 to 14 inches was a better dimension, so we could just include that in the revised version.
We'll have to pick one, so I'm going to put 12.
Sure.
It'll fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. And then was there any comments for the design guidelines for alterations?
Sorry,
Was there any comments for the design guidelines for alterations, or you can also send that to me if there's anything you think needs to be added? That was kind of a base default.
So I've got a question, and that, so with tonight's GLUA 2406, is there a requirement that we could put in place or something to educate the people coming in that the information we were missing that could have been included, some report from the solar company, from the installer, something to help us out there without sending them away, like saying, hey, go find this information and come back? Is there a way to be like, hey, when you come in, give us a reason why things are set up the way they are?
We could add, if you remember on the recommended side and the not recommended, the recommended side had the have you tried all the options that have the best solar array option, have you, and then, have you tried to meet the HRE policies, and is this the best balance of solar benefit and historic preservation? I would probably add a vaguer, because this is something we're adopting into guidelines, so I wouldn't want to say you should submit this type of study, but maybe an extra sentence that it's providing studies and background information that demonstrate that.
It just seems like it would be a beneficial use of time for everybody involved if they could provide that information to us at that point.
Even that standard is helpful for staff, because we can say, you need to make findings for these standards. Staff recommends you submit the following things. We do that all the time, submit the following photos because if you do that, they'll be a better place. Submit the following this. So I can add an extra sentence that implies.
I think it'd be helpful.
Turn studies in and turn.
I don't want to spend any time looking at somebody that's trying to do the best they can and being like, well, give me some more information and we'll talk about it later.
Well, I mean, the pictures that they presented were great. The problem is they created more questions than answers, right? I mean, that was the problem, and so.
I can't control for that. Okay, so I'm hearing,
And I guess, maybe as far as recommendations along that line, frequently an applicant does come in with a designer or something like that, but sometimes the solar providers are out of state or out of city or whatever like that. So they give us in the packet of information, 23 pages of technical stuff, which is not necessarily relevant to our decision. And they think, man, I gave you everything you need. There's nothing more. But that isn't the relevant information. So to a suggestion that for applicants that if they can have, you might say, their contractor or technical representative available either on Zoom or something like that to answer questions for the board. And you probably already do that. But I mean, some come in and don't realize, of course, what they're going to encounter, and they maybe just simply would have had to say to their salesman, hey, can you be ready for a Zoom call or be on a Zoom call when we have this, and then answer any questions that they have, and we could have got our answer right there,
I think that's a reasonable request.
yeah, that probably won't be in the policies, but that's definitely, we do that all the time.
Ultimately,
And I
it's
don't
up to
know
the
in this
applicant
situation.
to do what they want, but I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be to their benefit to.
I agree. All right, I think I have my direction. Please email me if you have any recommended photos, additional red lines, musings, anything. Everything you send me is helpful. But if you want to continue this June meeting, we will be having a June meeting, and we can keep on muscling through.
Yeah.
It's good. We do have another item, improving, or is that's part of what we just did, or?
Yeah, I think the solar panel just kind of moved
It's still part of
the
the,
continued.
Duality there?
yeah.
I don't know, this isn't a hearing, I don't know, do we?
There was
No,
one,
just consensus to,
Intended.
if we've ended solar panels, I would love to have a brief discussion on windows, historic window designs.
yeah, we have one more agenda item, and then we can do it
Okay.
under communication.
Okay, so we have improving the historic review approval process, work plan item number 6, condition with applicants and other departments to ensure compliance. Oh, sorry, apologies, coordination with applicants and other departments to ensure compliance with conditions of approval.
All right. So I've been working on this historic review board work plan item over the last couple of months, really as soon as it was adopted, and I just wanted to give you an update. I don't really have any additional questions at this moment, but some of the items that were brought up was to ensure conditions of approval are added to plans. We do that now. We're moving through electronic review, and we paste all the condition approval on either the main page or the second page in red. So it's there as part of the kind of stamped plans. Attend building pre-construction meetings. The building department is now doing commercial pre-construction meetings. Development Services always does pre-construction meetings when it involves work in the right-of-way. But the building division hadn't previously done pre-construction meetings for commercial projects, so they are doing that now. So for instance, our previous application this evening for the mixed-use project, we would have had a pre-construction meeting. So that would have been helpful. The single-family homes won't have pre-construction meetings, so that's just not going to be applicable for single-family homes that are part of the historic review board, but the plans will be added, the historic review board conditions will be added to the plans. There was a question to investigate if mid-build inspections is helpful and feasible. We're still working through that idea. It's complicated, it's a bit of a Pandora's box. You be bringing staff out, there's an inspection fee, and there isn't really a standard inspection step that makes sense for any particular project. So we're still working through the complexity of that. I'll have an update when I get more information. But it is complex. It's not an easy answer. Is it the foundation pour? Is it the structural review? Is it the framing? I mean, like, every one of that is an inspection. So you could go out for one as staff and have an extra staff inspection fee paid. But if there was a problem, it could be at the next level, right? So you can't have staff out at every time a building inspector goes out. You can't have planning staff. That's not feasible. So we're kind of still working through is if there's a magic middle review, or like what is it that the staff would come out for that would make sense for the applicant to pay a fee for staff inspection. The last one, which actually has been very helpful, and I attached to the agenda this evening, is a new written response form we ask applicants to fill out when they turn in their building permits. And actually, I used a template that I just sent to a recent approval, the new construction, the new infill on High Street that the board just approved a couple months ago. So there is like a Word document that has each historic review board condition of approval and a requirement for the applicant to respond how they are meeting it. They can't just say like, see plans. They have to show like, the applicant is proposing wood railing. Please see sheet D3 in this middle packet. So that is now basically a way to see if the applicant's answer matches the condition, and is a real check at the beginning of the building permit review process, which I think will be very helpful and would have identified this issue before it came to construction review for the previous project. So we've been doing those for commercial projects, but now we're adding historic review board as part of that submittal. So I think is going to be one of the most effective ways to implement this this work plan item. And I'll give you more update on the inspection conundrum when we have more information.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's just what we need. You know, it'd solve a lot of the problems that we've been seeing. If the applicant's not following specifically what was said in the meetings, before they can move in, you know, or fit whatever, we can solve that problem, I hope. That was the big concern, so that's great.
Yeah, fantastic.
So that's what I have for this item. I know board member Edgar wanted to talk about windows, and that actually is coming up as an upcoming work plan item, which is the conditions of approval, how to create template window conditions of approval for projects, to be able to add kind of the template approval, maybe amend if needed, but we have template conditions that reflect the ambitions of what the board wants for all the window dimensions of a new infill, new construction project. And that is set up through our certified local government grant, which we received this spring for bring a strict preservation consultant who works with contractors who can help work with you to frame the conditions that you want. I'm looking to get some bids this summer, and that person will be working with the board this fall. So hopefully we can get, conditions for commercial and residential, kind of single-family residential that you want. So when you write the conditions, you get the window you were expecting. And so I know board member Edgar had wanted to comment on that, but I wanted to let you know that that actually is happening this fall.
Great.
So on the 7th Street building, when I was out there looking at it and trying to determine whether the railing was appropriate, then I saw these windows that were flat, and we had adjudicated through the city commission with the cottage homes that there had to be something other than a flat window, and they agreed. And then I saw these modern windows there, and I thought, wow, the metal railing is the least of our problems. And this is one of those things where it's more than just the gables of the roof or some basic designs that make a historically appropriate design. And the eyes of a building are the windows, and
Are you suggesting that building would have looked better with some double
I'm
windows?
suggesting we could have done better. And so I would love to see us that's yesterday's newspaper, okay? Let's look at setting up something that makes sure that we, people, us and whoever follows us, has a better outline or a guideline of what is appropriate.
All right. Thank you. Are there any communications?
I do actually have one that kind of wanted to provide communications both for the HRB work plan item related to Windows, which is coming with our certified local government grant. It probably could take us, 1 or 2 work sessions, and we probably could muscle out. And it's a working, you don't have to adopt anything because it'll be just a working, template option for you. The other more complicated work plan item is the compatible change project, which is the definition of new construction and what gets triggered for historic review board. Currently, it's a 30% addition to non-designated structures or a standalone building of 200 square feet or more, or 201 square feet, I guess. This process started a couple years ago with the previous planner, Kelly Reed, and then the pandemic happened, and we had to put this project aside. It was outreach to the community. There were some draft ideas, but for staffing, really we weren't able to move forward. So we have a grant, in some sense, to kind of start over a little bit, but also take the work that's been done to date. But that's going to be a lot more staff intensive and also will require you as the board maybe to attend a couple neighborhood meetings, not all together, but one or two of you, and really shepherd this project process through, and that will also start in the fall. So I wanted to let you know that because I think I think what happened in the last round is that we thought it was going to be, we'll make a small tweak. Sound familiar? To the code about what new construction is, and then there was a lot of what ifs, and then it just kept what ifing, and I think it was hard to grapple on what clearly the board was trying to accomplish with that question. So a little bit of scope creep, I think, came in, and staffing abilities and COVID. And so I think this round we start again, what's our goal? What is our legal goal and what's our, community goal about revising these definitions for new construction? So, and that's probably going to be a lot more staff intensive this kind of the fall and spring of 2024 and 25.
Thank you. Any more?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We will now adjourn the May 28th, 2024 meeting of the Historic Review Board.